our team. He's Tony Tsoukalos. He's the beat writer for Bama Insider. I'm Mick Gillespie. And again, thanks for being here on a Monday night. All right, Tony, you mentioned it. Now I'm throwing it up there. Bryce Young leading the pack right now, according to Vegas, for the Heisman. With that said, I don't want Alabama fans to get too comfortable because look, I love Bryce Young. You know that. I think that he is the difference right now for Alabama. I mean, without him, I think they lose probably 4 games before it's all said and done. I love him. And I think the guy's been amazing. But I don't think he's had his Heisman moment yet. And I think he has to have one of those games and he has to have one of those moments to put himself, over the wall to win this thing. Your thoughts on the Heisman odds right now and the fact that Bryce is at the top of the field?
Yeah, I think he's going to, he's rightfully there. He's been doing it on a top team and he's really, especially lately, I think his production has been great, especially since I wrote about it in today's Heisman Watch. His production has been great since the Texas A&M loss. He's really done well. He's basically perfect against New Mexico State. I know you can't really take too much because it is New Mexico State, but when you start this, the game off with 13 straight completions and you go 21 of 23 and you throw 5 touchdowns, it's 21 of 23, Mick, and he had a drop. So, I mean, it was almost a perfect day. We've seen him make plays with his feet when he needs to. I know he doesn't like doing that, but he can. He's capable of it. He's had some good games against, good defenses. And so I think when it comes down to his Heisman odds, it's going to come down to that Georgia game. So, take care of business, get Alabama, win the next 2 games, give Alabama a shot to win the SEC and also make the playoff. And if he can beat Georgia, and I think he can, provide a good offensive production in that game and lead Alabama to the playoffs and an SEC title, I think the Heisman's his. You can just write it on his name and give it to him at the end of the game. Because I think, doing that against the number 1 team and against the Georgia defense that's been so dominant, that will just, write his name on the Heisman. I will say, though, after this week, I wouldn't be surprised if he falls behind a little bit in the standings. CJ Stroud is a hot name. Mm-hmm. You've also got Kenneth Walker, and those 2 are going to play each other. So that's a Heisman, pedestal kind of game. And one of those guys is probably going to have a great game against the other. And I think, either way it goes, if it's CJ Stroud or if it's Kenneth Walker, I think with Bryce Young playing an Arkansas defense that lets you, it doesn't give up big plays. It kind of lets you sit back and pick it apart. So the numbers might not be super eye popping for Bryce. I could see him having just an efficient game against Arkansas and one of those 2 guys going off in a high profile game. But I think that all balance out against Auburn and against Georgia. Bryce Young should have his moment to kind of reclaim that front runner status if he does so, lose it this week. And it really, like I said, it boils down to that Georgia game, and all eyes are going to be on him. And it's going to be not only the biggest test, it'll be the biggest test for any player this year. I think that's, the Heisman championship game, if you will.
Yeah. I don't feel like this is a season where anyone really has emerged and taken this thing, by the horns. I mean, last year, Smitty made that catch against LSU. And from that point on, everyone was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of the guy. And it turned out to be his Heisman. Obviously Alabama played LSU a couple of games ago. They play him the same time every year, right? So we kind of had an idea in early November that this guy had a really good chance to win. Bryce is at the head of the field, and he's been so good and consistent, but he hasn't had that one magical frame.
Yeah.
When you're doing play-by-play, they tell you, it's like, on TV, it's like all you're doing is just putting a caption under a frame, right? And that's kind of how the Heisman is too. Like you have that moment and everybody's like, yeah, that's the moment. And I don't feel like anyone's really gotten there yet.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair to say that last year, we had a ton of worthy Heisman candidates and really strong Heisman candidates, and then this year it's been, no offense to Bryce, who's had a great season. It's just he's been the best player right now. And there's been better seasons, better Heismans. It's just, right. It's not a very strong Heisman class. I mean, Bryce Young is in his first year as a starter, and so is CJ Stroud. And these are your 2 guys that are leading the Heisman. And both of them are probably going to be way better next year. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they're both leading the Heisman. And it's just kind of, it's been a weird year in college football. And to be honest with you, I don't think, you're talking about Alabama Heisman contenders. I think my vote would go to Will Anderson. I think when I watch Alabama games, he's the best player out there. He's just not getting it. I didn't mention him in the Heisman race because he's just not getting the odds, and I don't really think he'll get the votes. It's such an offensive award. But here's a guy with 67 tackles. 23 of those are for a loss. 23. And 12.5 sacks, and that's all through 10 games. I think that's crazy. I think, when you watch Alabama football games, he's the best player on the field every time he steps on the field. And he can influence games just as much as Bryce Young can, because he can shut down opposing offenses, and whether it be stopping the run, whether it be getting into the backfield for sacks, just pressures. He's crazy. He's basically a pro athlete playing college ball, and Alabama's going to get him another season next year. But he'd be my Heisman vote. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to really have too much of a chance at it.
At least not this year. It's tough for defenders to win the Heisman, but it is funny to me because I agree with you. The best player on the team is Will Anderson, and Bryce Young's the guy who is, I'd say, clearly the second best player on the team, right? But, Bryce Young's the guy that's in the mix for the Heisman right now. And that's just the way it is. It's an offensive award for the most part. It's hard for a defender to get there. But I'll tell you what, it's been so much fun watching Will Anderson Jr. wreck the opposition each and every week. Just ask LSU. I was thinking about that game. It's like, oh, yeah, Tennessee. Ask them about it. It's like this guy.
Mississippi State had 4 sacks.
Mississippi State. Did you see what Mississippi State did Saturday at Auburn?
Yeah.
You know why?
Big comeback.
Because they didn't have a Will Anderson Jr. in the backfield the entire game, right? So, yeah, it's amazing how good the guy is. But both players, one on offense and one on defense, have been really difference makers for Alabama. Without them, Alabama would not be number 2 right now in the college football playoff rankings heading into this game against Arkansas, and with a win wrapping up the West. Okay, yeah, with a win wrapping up the West, Tony, that's what they have to do.